GOP lawmakers have been working to get to the bottom of the origins of the Russia probe, authorizing a slew of subpoenas in the Senate. So what are the next steps in this investigation? Joining me right now is the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. And Senator, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for being here. You have been really zeroing in on the transition period, the supposed to be peaceful transition of power from the Obama administration to the Trump administration. You were the one who told us about the leaks, 126 leaks in 125 days. What can you tell us about your investigation, sir?
Let me first start by saying that Ambassador Grenell, Attorney General Barr are just heroes. They really are patriots in this very sad saga in terms of corruption of the transition period, and really looking forward to working with John Radcliffe as the new Director of National Intelligence. But I agree with Ambassador Grenell. Transparency is not political. I'm kind of amazed at the resistance I've had in my own committee to get the information, whether it's from Blue Star Strategies or now the other subpoena power, the subpoena authority that I've obtained. You know, what are they afraid of? But I really thought probably the most interesting part of the Grenell interview was the way, and he's seen more information than I have. He's been Director of National Intelligence, so he's seen more classified information. So we know, because of the footnotes that were previously declassified that my staff found, that the FBI was well aware that Russia tried to infiltrate the Steele organization, that Russian disinformation was actually in the Steele dossier. And what Ambassador Grenell just revealed is that members of the intelligence community also understood that, and they were either pushed aside or their information was classified. I think that's pretty darn interesting. So, from our standpoint, what our investigation is going to be centered on is, the basic thing that it always boils down to: who knew what and when did they know it? I mean, who did all these leaks? What was the purpose of these leaks? I mean, were they trying to cover something up? Was it a massive U.S.-led IC community-led disinformation campaign, a diversion operation, or was it simply to delegitimize the election and sabotage this administration? Those are the basic questions we're going to be answering, or asking, and hopefully get the answers for the American public, because transparency is all about getting the truth out so the American people understood what happened. So hopefully it'll never happen again, this corruption of the transition process.
Well, part of the leaks, I think, was to muddy up names in the Trump administration or the Trump campaign. For example, Carter Page told us on this program that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he starts getting all these phone calls from the press. Why? Because they started leaking that Carter Page had funny dealings with Russians. And so that started its own, narrative in the press. And I just want to point out that all of these years later, Carter Page was never charged. So for a year, he was surveilled unlawfully, wiretaps, so that they could get into the Trump campaign. And 4 years later, 3.5 years later, Senator, there's no charges on Carter Page.
No, Maria, what's really interesting, if you compare the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email scandal, that was not an investigation really designed to uncover the truth to lead to prosecutions. It was really an investigation designed to cover up the truth and exonerate Hillary Clinton. You compare that to Crossfire Hurricane and Crossfire Razor, the investigation of the Trump campaign's collusion into Russia and Flynn. I mean, those were witch hunts. And, again, you have to ask, what were they trying to accomplish? And it sure seems to me that they were highly political and either trying to cover up the wrongdoing because they understood how improper it was to do all these unmaskings, to be investigating a campaign, to surveil members of the campaign, also to sabotage this administration. So those are we generally know the outline of what happened, but we really need to understand who knew what when. And I'll tell you what I thought was very interesting about Rod Rosenstein's testimony is it was an astonishing lack of curiosity and management oversight regarding an investigation into the sitting president of the United States. I mean, think about that, Maria. So I look at Rod Rosenstein and I go, well, either it was willful ignorance, complete managerial incompetence, or he simply wasn't being truthful. I want to get to the bottom of who knew what and when did they know it.
Will you be able to get to the bottom of it? That whole time when Rosenstein was testifying, he said, I didn't hear that. I didn't know that. Had I known that, I would not have signed the warrant. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Can they all say that? Or do you, and then you mentioned the Hillary Clinton email investigation. the one individual who was overseeing both investigations, an investigation into Hillary Clinton and an investigation into Donald Trump in the summer of 2016, was Peter Strzok.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be an awful lot of claims of managerial incompetence, because it's a lot better than really admitting that you did something wrong, something illegal. But we're going to first start out with a thorough review of the documents. We're in a better position than what Devin Nunes was in the House a couple of years ago when they were undertaking those interviews, because we know so much more. So we have their interviews, and by the way, that's part of the logjam of information that's broken, is those were declassified. We'll have additional documents, and now we have a lot more information. So I think our interviews would probably be a lot more interesting, a lot more revealing. But no, we're going to have people not recall certain things. I mean, James Comey refused to have his classification reinstated before he was interviewed. I wonder why he did that. So no, there are so many unanswered questions that the American public really deserves the complete answers to.
Unbelievable. Do you think the John Durham criminal investigation will conclude this summer? When are you expecting that? I want to quickly move on to Biden, because I know that's also an investigation that you're involved in right now.
I hope so. But again, that's all designed to prosecute and indict. What congressional oversight is all about is, first of all, getting the information to inform public policy and inform the public. Two totally different objectives.
Yeah. Real quick on Biden, what have you learned in terms of Viktor Shokin, which, of course, we know that Joe Biden wanted him fired in Ukraine?
First thing I learned is subpoenas are powerful. We asked Blue Star Strategies, this Democrat-led lobbying firm that was representing Burisma, back at December 3rd to start cooperating with our committee. 6 months later, they had turned over 149 pages and sent a letter saying they were fully cooperating. The subpoena now has resulted in 2,600 pages of information. So we've learned that subpoenas work. But the big question I have is, what was the serious offense of Viktor Shokin? Why did the U.S. government come to the conclusion that he had to be fired, and that resulted in a very serious threat on the part of Vice President Biden? It doesn't make any sense. And literally, we've been trying to get from the State Department to actually have an oversight letter specifically asking that question. Why did the U.S. government require the firing of Viktor Shokin? I have no idea. It makes no sense to me.
Now, we know that Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, was working in Ukraine, so we're going to keep talking about that with you. Real quick before you go, a word from you on the homeland, given your role on the committee with all of this unrest going on across the country, whether it's Atlanta or Seattle. Your thoughts? What would you like to see President Trump do?
Well, first of all, it's curious the press hasn't been reporting on the citizens and the businesses and the property that are trapped in the new nation of Chaz. It is our responsibility to protect the constitutional right, the life, the liberty, the pursuit of happiness of every American citizen. I was amazed at Mayor Durkin's very glib response in terms of, how long could this section of Seattle look like this? And she said, well, who knows? It could be the summer of love. Her job is to protect the constitutional rights of every one of her citizens. If her and Governor Inslee aren't willing to do that, I think that's what President Trump and the federal government is going to have to step in and do. But I guess we'll give him some time. But I'd just like to know how many citizens, how many businesses, how many constitutional rights are being trampled on right now by the nation of Chaz.
All right, Senator, it's great to get your insights this morning on all of that. Thanks so much. We will keep checking back with you, Senator Ron Johnson.